Hello, friends. The 807th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Today, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense reported that at 5 a.m. the Russians began storming the border in the Kharkiv region. The attempt to break through the border took place with the support of armored vehicles, and fighting of varying intensity continues. Before this, airstrikes were carried out during the day, and since night the attacks on the front line of the defense of the Ukrainian armed forces from artillery intensified. Ukraine has redeployed reserves and Russia's offensive is being contained, the agency said. Zelensky also confirmed the offensive of the Russian army in the north of the Kharkiv region. He says that the Ukrainian armed forces were waiting for this and are holding back the Russians. But he noted that it is not yet known what reserves Russia is ready to throw into battle there. Ukrainian military personnel located in the Vovchansk region of the Kharkiv region reported that at night the Russians carried out powerful artillery preparations, and enemy sabotage and reconnaissance groups tried to probe the borderline. They were repulsed. The situation is very tense. The main reserves are expected to be brought in the near future. We must fight back, the fighter wrote. Also, the Ukrainian military in Vovchansk called on people to evacuate or sit in shelters. Meanwhile, the population is leaving Vovchansk and neighboring settlements en masse, the head of the local administration said. We are now evacuating the population. The majority of people leave by their own transport, but together with the humanitarian center, we organize the removal of those locals who do not have their own cars. We work together with volunteers and the police. We are removing them from Vovchansk and nearby settlements, the local administration reported. The Kharkiv military administration confirmed the intensified shelling of Vovchansk and the attempted breakthrough of sabotage and reconnaissance groups. According to them, the entire north of the region is being actively shelled. According to the Ukrainian military telegram channel Deep State, the Russian offensive began in 2 areas. The enemy is advancing in the direction of Kharkiv itself, in the villages of Strilecha, Krasne, Pylna and Borysivka, as well as towards Vovchansk. Now both sites of the Russian offensive on the Deep State map are marked as a gray zone. The enemy is trying to enter and gain a foothold in settlements along the border. The main forces of the Russians for the event are now infantry with the support of a small amount of equipment. The Russians do not dare to move further than the above settlements. Perhaps the main forces are expected to be involved. The available resources that the enemy has used for this moment, it will not be enough for a deep advance. Currently, the situation is such that the enemy is carrying out destabilization in the border areas. But it is unknown how many main forces he is ready to use for this maneuver, writes Deep State. Reuters, citing a senior military source from Ukraine, writes that the Russians this morning advanced 1 kilometer in the Vovchansk area. In this way, the Russians are trying to create a buffer zone, the source said. He believed that Russian forces sought to push Ukrainian armed forces back 10 kilometers from the Russian border and that Kiev forces were trying to contain them. Also, the editor-in-chief of the Ukrainian website, Censor Butusov, reports that the Russian army captured 4 border settlements in the Kharkiv region, namely the villages of Strilecha, Krasne, Pylna and Borysivka. There is also slight progress in the second direction of the attack, in the Vovchansk area. The total area of the occupied territory is more than 30 square kilometers. Russian troops attacked with up to 4 to 5 infantry battalions. This area under the border has long been in fact a gray zone. The line of defense was not deployed there, and therefore the enemy managed to create a bridgehead up to 10 kilometers wide and up to 5 kilometers deep on the territory of Ukraine without any special obstacles. This is approximately 40 kilometers from Kharkiv, writes Butusov. He states that this is a big question, why the enemy managed to capture such a significant territory so quickly with infantry forces, because this attack did not come as a surprise to the Ukrainian command. They talked about the offensive for many months, and there was enough time to prepare so that the infantry would not march, the journalist notes. In particular, the organization of defense in the Strilecha area, was ineffective. There, Russian troops are trying to advance further. They have been stopped in other areas, but more attacks are expected. If they are not stopped and do not inflict heavy losses, they will begin to capture other areas along the border in order to first move the front away from the border with Russia, and then use this front as a possible springboard for an offensive with more significant forces, Butusov writes. Deep State publishes details of the situation with the village of Pylna, which today was named among the 4 occupied by the Russian army. The Telegram channel claims, citing its sources, that the Russians have been freely in the village for some time, as if they were at home, and the local command strangely provided information about the situation in the village, which, in particular, was used by the highest military political management. As evidence, Deep State publishes screenshots of the presence of the Russian army in Pylna in previous days. The result is natural. The enemy has accumulated its forces and began to advance both to neighboring villages and to the south. A Deep State summarizes. He concludes that there is a problem with establishing communication between units, which, according to our friends, local management is not able to establish, which leads to personnel losses, including due to the lack of counter-battery combat. It is also concluded that so far the offensive actions of the Russians are distracting in nature and limited in their mechanized capabilities. However, landings on Russian territory contain additional forces that can be used in case of accidental success, as for example, in Chertuni. At the same time, Kharkiv Governor Sinegubov denies territorial losses on the border with Russia. All offensive attacks were repulsed. There was no loss of territory, Sinegubov said. And he added that fighting continues in these border areas. When asked for clarification whether the Russians had broken through the border, the governor said that the entire frontline territory is actually a gray zone. The enemy can enter a certain territory with equipment, then battles ensue and the enemy is destroyed there, Sinegubov said. Meanwhile, the longest air raid during the war continues in the Kharkiv region. At the time of creation of the material, the air raid alarm had been going on for more than 10 hours. Friends, this channel exists solely thanks to your support. If you have the opportunity and desire to support the channel, I will be very grateful to you. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.